What's up guys, Sagi here and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today we're going to compare two fantastic beginner DSLR cameras, the Canon SL2 and the newer SL3. Depending on where you're from, the SL2 is also known as the 200D and the SL3 is also known as the 250D or 200D Mark II, but to keep things simple, we're going to call them the SL2 and the SL3. The SL2 is easily one of Canon's most popular beginner cameras, and I was super excited when the SL3 was announced. You can see that the cameras are similar in terms of look, and I'll tell you soon in terms of functionality and performance, but there are some critical differences between them that you should know about before you choose one over the other. We're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each option when it comes to both photography and video, and at the end of this video, I'll help you decide which one is best for you depending on what you plan on using it for. And it might not be what you think. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna get into details for each aspect of the two camera, but I wanna start out with some overall key features. Starting out with the SL2, it has a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor, and it uses Canon's dual pixel autofocus system. Canon implemented the Digic 7 processor, which helps with speed and performance, as well as overall image quality. It has a 3-inch fully articulating touchscreen LCD, and it can shoot video at up to 1080p at 60 frames per second. Being a DSLR, the SL2 uses an optical viewfinder. A big feature for a camera at this price point is that the SL2 has an external mic input, which lets you use an external microphone for better audio. And it also has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can easily move images to your mobile device and even control the camera remotely using the Canon Camera Connect app. Moving on to the SL3, it also has a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor and also uses Canon's super nice dual pixel autofocus system. It has the newer Digic 8 processor, which improves speed, performance, and image quality. It also has a 3-inch fully articulating touchscreen LCD and can shoot video at up to 4K 24 frames per second. Like the SL2, it also has an optical viewfinder. It also has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth functionality, but you can now more easily connect to the camera and move images and video to your mobile device. And of course, control it completely using the Canon Camera Connect app. In terms of ergonomics, the SL3 is very similar to the SL2. The lines are a little bit sharper, but the feel is essentially the same. As far as differences, I did notice that the mode dial on top no longer has a no flash and creative auto modes. The other thing I noticed is that the flash on the SL3 is triggered using this small flange right here, whereas on the SL2, there is a flash trigger button right here on the side. Both cameras are small and light, with the SL3 being something like 4 grams lighter, which isn't noticeable. This is one of my favorite things about these cameras because in both cases, you're getting a versatile and powerful DSLR camera in a compact and light form factor. I also like that they're not too small, so especially for people with larger hands, some cameras kind of feel like a toy and are a little bit more difficult to handle. As far as battery life, the SL2 is rated for 650 shots, which I always thought was a lot. This pretty much let me shoot all day without having to worry about a backup battery. The SL3 is rated for 1070 shots, which is a significant step up. And now I can definitely shoot all day without having to worry about battery life. In case you already have an SL2 and you're upgrading to the SL3, they both use the same battery, so you'll have an immediate backup. Both cameras use an optical viewfinder, which helps preserve the battery life when you're not shooting images in live view. Now, both the SL2 and the SL3 have a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor, which Canon uses on more expensive APS-C models. All things being equal, the bigger the sensor, the better it is. And a bigger sensor means better image quality because it's able to use more information to create an image with more detail and better dynamic range. This APS-C sensor is great if you're shooting landscape, portraits, if you want to do street photography, if you want to take it with you while you travel, or even if you're just doing family and lifestyle photography. It's also a great choice for shooting video, creating content for YouTube, or if you're just a hobbyist. It's going to give you really nice and crisp video, and of course, Canon's color science is fantastic. Now, all in all, the 24 megapixel APS-C sensor on the SL2 and the SL3 gives you really nice performance at a very affordable price. As far as processors, the SL2 uses the Digic 7 and the SL3 uses the newer Digic 8. Together with a nice sensor, both cameras will give you sharp images and video and good low light performance. The new processor on the SL3 is more efficient and it's responsible for the improved battery life and the ability to process 4K video. So as far as processors go, I'm going to give the advantage to the SL3 because of the benefits of the new processor. General menu operation is fast for both cameras. Both have quick startup, and things like image preview and video playback are quick and responsive. One of the features that I look at for every camera that I get is continuous or burst shooting. So you can just point the camera at a subject, hold the shutter down, and the camera will just keep firing. And this is a nice feature if you're photographing sports, pets, if you got kids running around, or any time where you're trying to photograph a fast-moving subject. Now, of course, the more frames you can shoot per second, the more exposures you'll have to pick from later on. And this is an area where Canon didn't make an improvement, so both the SL2 and the SL3 can shoot it up to 5 frames per second. As far as continuous shooting, it's a tie. Next, I want to talk about resolution and frame rate. For photography, both cameras offer 6,000 by 4,000 pixel images. So as far as head-to-head resolution, it's a tie. Now, as far as image quality, I've been getting pretty similar results. I'll do a more detailed image quality comparison in another video, so if you're interested in seeing that, make sure that you subscribe and have notifications turned on. Now let's get to video recording options. And one of the biggest selling points of the SL3 is that Canon added 4K video at 24 and 25 frames per second. And this is in large due to the improved abilities of the Digic 8 processor, and it's one of the biggest, again, if not the biggest upgrades on the SL3. And I'll get back to 4K on the SL3 in a minute. I just want to finish the comparison. Now, this is where things get a little wonky, and I'm not exactly clear what Canon is doing here. Before I get into the options, I want to mention that your choice of frames per second comes down to what kind of look you want your video to have. So if you like a more cinematic look, then you're going to shoot at 24 frames per second. If you want your footage to be super sharp and crisp, you can shoot at 60 frames per second. I like a little bit of both, so I shoot my videos and edit them at 30 frames per second. And the nice thing, if you do shoot your videos at 30 frames per second like I do, is I can play my 60 frames per second footage from either one of these cameras at 30 frames per second, and I can slow things down by 50%. Okay, the SL2 can shoot full HD or 1080p at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second if you're shooting in NTSC. The SL3 only offers 1080p at 30 and 60 frames per second, so Canon removed the ability to shoot at 24 frames per second. This is something that I just can't understand. I have plenty of content around this topic, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But if you watched my SL2 cinematic footage tutorial, you know that if you want to get cinematic looking footage, you want to shoot at 24 frames per second. So now on the SL3, shooting at 24 frames per second is only available if you shoot in 4K. And you might say, fine, I'll just shoot 4K video. There's plenty of advantages to shooting in 4K. Okay, so let's talk about 4K. Just like on the M50, with the SL3, you have to apply an additional crop factor when shooting in 4K. Now, the total crop factor is 2.64x, and this ends up being really significant. And I'll give you an example using a very popular lens from my best lenses for the SL2 video, the 50mm f1.8. I'm going to put it on the SL3. If I shoot at 1080p, it converts it to 80mm equivalent field of view because the SL3 has an APS-C sensor. Okay, no problem there, I knew that going in. But when I want to use it in 4K, if I want to shoot at 24 frames per second, I have to apply an additional crop factor, which gives me around 132mm field of view. And in addition to that, the famous dual pixel autofocus doesn't work when you're shooting in 4K. Now, this was also true on the M50, and if you watched my SL2 versus M50 comparison, I don't give the M50 such a hard time because I always had the option to shoot at full HD or 1080p at 24 frames per second. In that case, I was looking at 4K as a choice. If you want to shoot in 4K on an entry-level camera from Canon, the price was this additional crop factor. But now there is no other option if I want to shoot at 24 frames per second. So how am I going to do this comparison? I'm finding it pretty difficult to give the edge to the SL3 as far as resolution and frame rate, and here's why. If you want 24 frames per second, then you have to shoot super cropped 4K on the SL3 and with no dual pixel autofocus. If you don't want 24 frames per second, then you're not getting 4K on the SL3 anyway because there's no option for 4K 30. So I'm just not sure that it's a better value, and it's actually a little more restrictive than the SL2. So I'm struggling a little bit here to give one of these the edge, and I'd love to know what you think in the comment section. The nice thing for anyone not shooting in North America or the few other countries that use NTSC is that you can still shoot at 25 frames per second in both 1080p and 4K. Next, I want to talk about one of the most exciting features of the SL3, and that is a clean HDMI out. This means that the SL3 can output video that does not include the menu and focus overlays. With the SL2, unless you use special software, you could only stream by using manual focus and then hiding the on-screen elements to mimic a clean HDMI out. But with the SL3, you can have the autofocus with face and eye detection on and still get beautiful, crisp, and in-focus video right to your stream. You can also record 422 10-bit video externally and get amazing footage with more information to use when color correcting and grading. So for anyone who wants to stream, the SL3 is an incredible option and definitely has a huge advantage over the SL2. Alright, let's move on to lens options. Both the SL2 and the SL3 can accept Canon EF and EF-S mount lenses. This is a huge bonus, and it means you have access to the entire lineup of Canon lenses. Anything from inexpensive EF-S lenses to the most expensive L-series glass worked beautifully on both of these cameras. And I'll put a link up in the corner and in the description to a video that will help you pick the best lenses for both of these cameras. All right, next let's talk about autofocus. And this is something that you definitely want to consider when you're choosing a camera. And the good news here is that both the SL2 and the SL3 use Canon's dual pixel autofocus, which is so good. This is definitely one of the best autofocus systems on the market at any price point, and I never get any type of focus hunting when I use it. For photography, when using the viewfinder, both cameras have a 9-point autofocus system, with the center point being a cross-type autofocus point. I was hoping to see more AF points on the SL3, but no luck. When using the LCD for photography, we now use the dual pixel autofocus system, so we have face tracking. Both the SL2 and the SL3 will identify a face and then track it as it moves through the frame and then keep it in focus. And you're able to use the left and right arrow buttons to move from one face to another within your frame, which is really cool when there's more than one person in your shot. I couldn't find information about the number of positions available for autofocus point on the SL2, but on the SL3 it's 3,975. Whatever the number is going to be on the SL2, I'm just assuming it's going to be a lot less. A great new feature on the SL3 is the addition of eye detection autofocus, which can be used to prioritize focus on the subject's eye. This is awesome for portraits when you no longer have to worry about where your focus point is, and you're getting much more precise focus on the eye rather than just generally on the face. Now, if you have multiple faces in the same shot, again, you can use the right and left arrow to select a different subject, and if eye detection is on, you can use the arrows to switch between the subject's eyes. Now for video, great continuous autofocus is absolutely critical. If you're vlogging and walking around, you can always set your focus to manual, but as you're moving and the camera is moving, it's moving closer and farther away from you, or you might get tired and switch hands, and the camera doesn't stay the same distance from you. So it's beautiful to be able to just turn on face detection, and all you have to worry about is being framed correctly, and the camera will automatically keep you in focus. Like I said in the past about other Canon cameras that use the dual pixel autofocus system, it absolutely crushes it. Going back to eye detection, with the SL3, we can use eye detection both in 4K and Full HD video, so as long as the subject is facing the camera, both face and eye detection worked really well for me. Now for the purpose of creating YouTube content or shooting interviews or just video in general, I think that good continuous autofocus is definitely a feature that you're going to want. Now, another cool thing that I can do with both of these cameras is click on different items on the screen, and I can easily change focus. So I can get a really cool transition where in my video I might be talking about one thing, so I keep it in focus, and then I want to shift the viewer's attention to something else I'm talking about, So as I talk about it, I click on the other subject and then it brings it into focus. And then finally, both of these cameras have awesome subject tracking. So you can just click on anything in your shot and you'll get a little white square around it. And then both the SL2 and the SL3 will track that subject as it moves through the frame. Now I want to point out again that for the SL3, the dual pixel autofocus doesn't work when you're shooting in 4K, so just keep that in mind. As far as autofocus goes, I'm going to give the edge to the SL3 because eye detection gives you an extra level of precision when it comes to autofocus. Now, something else that I love about both the SL2 and the SL3 for video is that they both have a 3.5mm mic input. And that's a great feature if you want higher production value because it allows you to use an external microphone instead of the built-in stereo mic. So I can easily connect a shotgun mic to both my SL2 and SL3 and I'll immediately get better audio. And I get a really nice and compact setup. It's light, it's portable, and I get great video in focus and great audio. And it's just perfect for vlogging, for shooting talking head video, and really just any time where you want to get more directional sound pickup instead of the omnidirectional microphone that will pick up sound from everywhere. There are a lot of outstanding microphone options on the market, and I'll put some links in the description to some of my favorites. And I also did a comparison of some of the popular shotgun microphones to help you pick the right microphone for the budget that you have. Now, as far as using a lavalier microphone, I can use a wired lav with both the SL2 and the SL3 if I don't mind being tethered to the camera. And I can even go wirelessly if I want. That way I don't have to worry about being attached to the camera. I can always put the camera down and step back and the microphone is still on me. And that way I get consistent sound. Now, a huge improvement with the SL3 is that you can now see the audio levels on the LCD. And this is true while you're setting up, but more important that you can see them while you're recording. So you can easily see that your audio is not clipping or isn't too low, and you can make any necessary adjustments. As far as audio goes, I'm gonna give the edge to the SL3 because I think that being able to see the audio levels is such an important feature. Next, I want to talk about the size, weight, and build quality. And these cameras are virtually identical. Canon definitely got positive feedback about the form factor of the SL2, and they simply modernized it a bit by adding a little bit sharper lines on the SL3. For DSLR cameras, both of these are crazy light, and even with the 18-55 kit lens, they're both under 2 pounds. The SL3 does weigh 4 grams less, but that's not anything that you're ever gonna notice. So as far as portability goes, I'm gonna call it a tie because again, they're virtually identical. Both the SL2 and the SL3 have optical viewfinders, which I really like because they give you a sense of being in the scene. A good optical viewfinder is also a good option when you're shooting in low light because the resolution and responsiveness don't drop like they could on some electronic viewfinders. Now, from a specs perspective, I couldn't find a difference between the two viewfinders, and in real life, they seem to be identical to me. I'm not gonna give either of these an advantage because again, they seem to be the same viewfinder. Moving on, both the SL2 and SL3 have a super versatile 3-inch 1.04 million dot fully articulating touchscreen. It can be flipped and locked into position on the back of the camera if you're behind the camera, or flipped again for protection and storage when it's not in use. I love the fact that I can point it up when I'm shooting from waist level or on a tripod, or anytime when the camera is lower than I am. I also like the flexibility of having it point down if the camera is above my head. Finally, I like to either have it flipped out and pointed back or just pointed to the side when I'm using it on a gimbal, and that way I never need an external monitor. As far as the screen goes, again, I'm going to call it a tie because the LCD is the same. Next, let's talk about connectivity and remote control options. Both the SL2 and the SL3 come with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth options that work with the Canon Camera Connect app. And the app lets you connect to a mobile device wirelessly and then transfer images and videos so you can very quickly share them. Also, both the SL2 and the SL3 can use the app to remotely control the camera for pictures. So you can have the camera set up, you can use your phone as a remote screen, change settings and focus, and then take the picture. When it comes to video, both the SL2 and the SL3 give you complete control over the camera using the Canon Camera Connect app. You can frame your scene, you can change settings, you can see and set focus, and you can remotely start and stop recording. And this is an incredible feature if you're shooting by yourself. It makes being in front of the camera a lot easier. There's no more walking back and forth to the camera to start and stop it. I can sit down, move myself with the camera until I get the shot exactly how I want it to be framed, and then I start and stop the video right from my phone. Now, as far as the interface, the SL3 uses a more user-friendly integration for wireless settings in the menu. There is actually a dedicated top-level menu option, which I like because I don't have to go searching for that feature. Even though it's just a slight advantage, I'm going to give the edge to the SL3. All right, I want to talk about a few other features that might help you make a buying decision, and then we'll get to the final verdict. So both cameras do in-body 1080p time-lapse, and it's super simple to do it. It's much easier for most people than having to use an external intervalometer and then taking those pictures and converting them into a time-lapse using software. The SL3 has 3 specific time-lapse scenarios built in, so fast, slow, and slower subject movement. It will automatically pick the right settings for your time-lapse shot. If you want a little more control, there's also a custom setting which gives you full control. You can just select the interval in seconds, which is how long you want there to be between each shot. You can select how many shots you want the camera to take, and then whether you want the exposure from the first image to remain the same throughout, or you want the camera to do auto exposure for every picture. Now, the SL2, on the other hand, doesn't come with presets or the ability to save them, so you have to select your setting every time. Again, for beginners, or even for me, it's nice to have these presets, and at the same time, I think once you do a few time-lapse video, you'll easily get the hang of using the custom feature. I'm going to give the edge here to the SL3 because of these additional presets. On top of that, the SL3 can also do 4K time-lapse, which is a game changer. First, if you're working on a 4K timeline, you're going to need to fill your frame. Second, if you're working on a 1080p timeline, having a 4K time-lapse gives you some awesome options when it comes to framing. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know in the comment section and I'll help you out. Another new feature only offered on the SL3 is Smooth Skin Mode, which offers 5 levels of skin smoothing to help reduce blemishes and make the subject's skin appear soft. Next, I want to discuss the hot shoe functionality. And like I said in my review of the SL3, this isn't something that I would normally discuss because it's pretty straightforward, but there's a little wrinkle here. With the SL3, Canon removed the center pin. So the SL3 is not compatible with most third-party flashes and accessories. The SL2 does have the center pin, so you can use much less expensive options if you plan on adding an external flash. Again, this is a strange move by Canon. I'm assuming they did this to keep users within the ecosystem, but once again, it's something that could frustrate some users. Finally, let's talk about price and value. And my goal with every product comparison is to give you a detailed overview of the products and then compare them in a way that relates to real life use. And if you found this video helpful, please let me know in the comment section. It really helps me out. I'm also going to include links in the description to where you can buy these cameras, as well as some of my favorite lenses and accessories. And if you end up using those links to buy anything, not just those items, you help support my channel for free and allow me to create more content for you. So thank you. Now, at the time of shooting this video, the SL2 costs $499 and the SL3 costs $549. So that's a $50 difference. Now, depending on when you're watching, the price may be a little bit different, but the SL2 should be a little less expensive than the SL3. Now, I don't normally look just at price. I look at value. I think about what you're paying and then what you get, and then I figure out what's the best combination. All right, so which of these is a better value? When the SL3 came out, I immediately jumped to the conclusion that it's a better value because it was only an extra 50 bucks. But here's what I decided. If you plan on using one of these cameras for photography and time-lapse, then the SL3 is a better value in my opinion. You're getting much better battery life, you're getting eye detection, a newer processor, easier connectivity, and a 4K time-lapse option. If you plan on doing live streaming, then again, the SL3 is a clear winner because it comes with a clean HDMI out, which lets you get clean, crisp, and in-focus video right to your live streaming software. Now, if you plan on using one of these cameras for video, things get a little less clear. If you want 24 frames per second and you want to shoot at 1080p, you need to go with the SL2. If your priority is to shoot in 4K at 24 frames per second and you're okay with the added crop factor and no dual pixel autofocus, then you should get the SL3. If you don't care about 24 frames per second and you're gonna shoot at 30 or 60 frames per second, then once again, I would say go with the SL3 because you're getting additional features like eye detection and 4K time-lapse and the improved battery life. You can't have everything in any camera, so it comes down to what's important to you. I do my best to answer every question, so if you have any additional questions, just fire away. Like I said, I'll put links in the description to where you can get the SL3 and SL2, as well as some of the popular kits and accessories. And there are always holiday specials and discounts, and those links will be updated with the lowest pricing. I also have links in the description to a more detailed video about each of these cameras in case you want a more in-depth review. I really hope this video gave you a good comparison between the SL2 and SL3, and I would love to hear in the comment section which one of these options is best for you. If this video was helpful, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, tweet it, share it, and if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe and notification buttons. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk, and you know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon. But here's what I decided. If you plan, Canon implemented the or even if you're just doing family and lifestyle with no dual autofocus, hocus pocus, is that you can still shoot at 25 frames, and they simply modernized it. Modernized it. Is that what they did? And Bluetooth options that work with the Canon, work with the Canon. Now on top of that, the SL2, again, I'm throwing it. Whereas on the SL2, there is a flash release button, but it's not on, so it won't work. It doesn't have a battery, so it's still not gonna work, but I'll be back and then it will work.